two people walk into the same optician on the same street on the same afternoon. One walks out with a pair of glasses, the other walks out with nothing, and he spent more time in the building. He was not browsing. He was being measured. The glasses he ordered do not exist yet. They will be made for him specifically. They will take 11 weeks. When they arrive, he will not show them to anyone because the people who would understand are already wearing something similar, and the people who would not understand would simply see glasses. This is not a story about vision correction. It is a story about what sits on a billionaire's face and why it costs more than most people's cars. Most people think luxury eyewear is a designer logo pressed onto a frame. It is not. The logo is the beginning of the conversation, not the point of it. There are 7 levels to this world. At the top, the word glasses is never used. The object has a different name entirely. It is called a commission. Level 1, the logo on the temple he picked them up at the airport. He needed sunglasses. The flight was long. The case at the terminal had a brand he recognized. The price felt like a decision, and he paid $280. The brand name sits on the temple arm in raised lettering. He notices the lettering when he cleans them. He has not thought much about them since. The frames were manufactured in a facility producing the same model in 11 colorways for distribution across 43 countries. The logo was the product. The frame was the delivery mechanism for the logo. He bought the recognition, not the object. At level 1, the glasses are interchangeable. The brand is not. The man wearing them is not thinking about eyewear. He is thinking about other things while the eyewear happens to him on his face. Level 2, the informed purchase. She researched these for 3 weeks. She read reviews. She visited 2 stores. She tried on 14 pairs before deciding. She spent $800, and she considers this entirely reasonable because she wears them every day and she can tell the difference. The acetate is Italian. The hinges are German. The lenses were a separate conversation, and she upgraded those as well. She is now a person who has opinions about frame quality. Her friends ask where she got them. She tells them the brand name with the specific energy of someone who has done the research and feels the research has been validated. At level 2, the buyer is genuinely informed and the product is genuinely better. The difference between level 2 and level 1 is craftsmanship. The difference between level 2 and level 3 is something harder to explain. Level 3, the independent house, he found this brand through a magazine article about independent designers. It does not sell in airports. It does not sell in department stores. There are 11 stockists globally. He visited the one in his city specifically because it was the only place carrying this range. The frames are handmade in Japan. The acetate is cut individually. No 2 pairs are exactly identical because the material behaves differently at the edges. A variation the maker considers a feature, not a flaw. He paid $1,400. He will not find another person wearing the same pair in his city. That is not an accident. The brand controls distribution because distribution controls perception. At level 3, the buyer is not purchasing eyewear. He is purchasing the fact that most people have never heard of this brand. And he has level 4. The heritage manufacture these brands have been making frames since before commercial aviation existed. The techniques are unchanged. The acetate is sourced from the same Italian suppliers that have been providing material for 70 years. The craftsmen in these workshops hold job titles that do not translate cleanly into English because the role requires a kind of knowledge that accumulates over decades and cannot be trained in months. She spent $4,000. She was told the waiting time for her preferred colorway was 6 weeks. She waited. When the frames arrived, the case alone was an object worth keeping. She has kept every case. At level 4, the buyer understands she is paying for continuity. The brand has been doing this longer than she has been alive. The frames will outlast her current prescription, which will change, and she will order again, and the brand will still be there, making frames the same way, in the same building, using the same hands. Level 5, the precision instrument here, the frame is no longer a fashion object. It is an engineering project. The titanium is aerospace grade, the same classification used in structural components of high-altitude aircraft. The tolerances are measured in fractions of a millimeter. The screws are manufactured on equipment shared with surgical instrument production. That is not a marketing claim. That is a specification. He paid $9,000. The optician who fitted them spent 40 minutes on the adjustment alone because at this price point, a frame that sits incorrectly is a failure of the product, not the face. The lenses were ground individually using data from a mapping process that took 45 minutes and produced a file kept permanently on record. When his prescription changes, they pull the file and recalibrate. Level 4 was about permanence of craft. Level 5 is about precision of fit. fit. The object on his face is a calibrated instrument. It happens to be worn like glasses. Nobody in his office knows what they cost. He did not tell them. The telling would reduce the object to a number. The object is not about the number. Level 6, the bespoke commission. There is no catalog. She was referred by someone who was referred by someone else. She contacted the studio by email and received a reply from the maker directly. The first appointment was a conversation, not a fitting. He asked about her face, which she expected. Then he asked about her life, which she did not. He wanted to know where she spent most of her time, what light she worked in, whether she preferred weight or weightlessness at the end of a 14-hour day, whether the frames were for professional settings, personal ones, or both. The conversation lasted 90 minutes. The measurements came after, more comprehensive than anything she had encountered at any optician. She paid $22,000. The frames took 14 weeks. When they arrived, she understood immediately why the conversation had been necessary. The object was calibrated not just to her face, but to the life her face moves through. There is one pair like this in the world. It is hers. Level 7, the unrepeatable object. He did not search for this. He was approached. The maker had seen a photograph of him in a publication and contacted his office through his assistant. The first communication was a portfolio, not a pitch. He looked at it for 20 minutes before responding. The meeting happened at his location of preference. The maker brought materials he had never encountered: experimental acetate from a closed Italian workshop, a titanium alloy developed for a European aerospace program, lens material used in high-altitude aviation optics that had never before been adapted for civilian eyewear. He spent 3 months in conversation before commissioning. The final object cost $240,000. It took 7 months to complete. It is not a pair of glasses. It is a singular object that was created once for him that will never exist again in this form. There is no certificate of authenticity because authenticity is not the point. The point is that it exists and he is the reason it exists. The maker will not reproduce it. He did not ask for that assurance. He did not need to. At level 7, the object and the owner are part of the same conversation, and the conversation was always the product. What eyewear actually sells at level 1? Eyewear sells recognition. At level 3, it sells exclusivity. At level 5, it sells precision. At level 7, it sells singularity, the fact that the object was made because you exist and would not exist otherwise. Most people never move past level 2, not because they cannot afford to, but because the levels above it are not advertised. They are found. The people at level 6 and 7 are not searching. They have already been found. The maker chose them. That is the inversion nobody talks about. The buyer believes he is acquiring something. The maker has already decided the buyer is worthy of the thing being made. The object arrived before the decision did. The glasses were never the point. The fact that no one else has them always was. If you want to understand how every luxury industry actually operates, not how the advertisement frames it, not how the brochure describes it, but how the system works at the level where money stops being the deciding factor, this channel breaks it down every single week. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and never miss a breakdown. The level above always exists. We are always going there.